think I have to look over. I have to look over here, right? All right, I'm gonna look over there. So I went to the car because to do this video because I just tried to do another video and there were a lot of distractions. Plus I was getting cold. So here I am. This is part 2 of the video that I did the other day on. It was called ACIM struggles, the struggles that many people have with the course. And I wanted to say a little bit more about it. This is part 2. Hopefully going to take it a little deeper, the discussion, and what I thought about saying here is we tend to think of these extreme cases. That's what I was talking about. Like you have a child, right? For example, and something happens to your child, right? If someone does something to your child, I mean, most of us could take it if it was just us, right? If someone was attacking us, or if someone is harming us in whatever way, or whatever it is. But for a child, especially if something tragic happens to our child, how do we deal with that, right? And how can we let that go? How can we deal, Let's first say that there, any number of examples of people who forgive people for doing something to their family, right? That happens all the time. A lot of people cannot forgive. They never forgive. Other people do forgive, right? And at least they say they do. Whether they really do is another, it's one thing to say, I forgive you. It's another thing to really let it go, right? And how do you really let something go? That was one thing I had with my parents, is that they had a very nasty breakup and very nasty divorce. The divorce proceedings went for many years, and they would say later in life, I've forgiven your mother, my dad would say, or my mother would say, I forgave your father. But did they really? I didn't think they did. I think they were still holding on to, things. But that, that's not for me to judge really, but that's what it seemed like to me, is that they said that they forgave, but what does forgiveness really mean, right? Forgiveness for the course is there's a ladder of forgiveness. It's one thing just to say I forgive another person. That's one level, but really where the course is taking us is ultimately to realize there's nothing to forgive. The other person really is you, right? They are, their self is your self. You are one. There really is no ultimate difference. And so to see another separate entity is in itself a lack of forgiveness. It's a very tall order, as I've been saying. The Jesus's course is really profound, and you can understand it on different levels, and it's written on different levels. It's written, a lot of the language in the course is dualistic, but there are places in the course which seem to be expressing things in a non-dualistic way, such as when it says things like, the Son disappears into the Father and the Father disappears into the Son, so that there's no more Son and no more Father anymore. Now, on that note, I want to talk about my dad and how I felt growing up with my dad. Now, looking back on it now, I think my dad did a pretty good job, right? My parents, I think, for the most part, even though they had that very nasty breakup, divorce, they did a lot of great things, right? They did a lot of good things, and we had, a pretty good childhood and adolescence with my parents, right? I this is coming from a place of seeing a lot of the world now, and maturing, and now I can look at my parents in a more objective way. But and that's true for most people. As they get older, they can see things more objectively. Now, when I was going through it, though, I was very scared of my dad. My dad intimidated me. My dad used corporal punishment with us. My dad said nasty things to us, which I don't want to repeat. My dad made us feel less than, made us feel guilty. Basically, did what most parents do to their children. But I think when you're young and you're impressionable and you're vulnerable and your brain is still forming and you're still growing, that can have that can be very traumatic and have a very big impact on a growing person, right? So for me, it was traumatic. It was like earth-shattering stuff. Now it would not be, right? But at that time, that's the way it felt for me. And in many ways, I didn't want to have much to do with my dad. I wanted to get away from him. I wanted to get away from my mom. I wanted to get away from my whole family, which I did to a certain extent. But as I got older, I also came to realize that if my dad hadn't been that way, it was all perfect. It was all what it needed to be. Because my dad being the way that he was, set certain things in motion with us that led us to be turned out to be the kind of people that we were, right? If my dad hadn't been that way, if my dad had been less authoritarian and disciplinarian and I would say a dictator, autocrat, I don't know what you would call him, dictator, I might not have strived in the ways that I strived, right? And I might not have sought and become a seeker in the way that I did. And I might not have gone to the extreme that I did to understand certain things if my dad had not been that way. And that understanding, or that insight that I'm expressing to you, I've had other times as well. And I think really what it comes down to is the realization that everything that happened in the past was exactly as it had to be, right? And this is the liberating understanding, right? When you start to realize that nothing in your life was ever out of place. It was exactly as it needed to be. Even the bad shit, even the traumatic shit, even the things that were the worst for you, in the end, those things might have been the greatest blessing in disguise. So that's why, that's where I want to go with this. And let me just say one more thing, which is that it was either Ken or Helen. I think Ken had this dream where he was asked by like a lawyer or someone, I'm forgetting exactly, right? But it's something like this. And the lawyer was like Helen, and was asking him, if you could live your life differently, how would you live your life differently? And in the dream, he said, I would not live my life differently because everything was exactly as it needed to be. And this is a liberating idea. Also one that we resist highly. And I would not say this to someone who's in the midst of trauma or in the midst of suffering. I wouldn't say something like, I wouldn't say these kinds of things, it really, these are the things that everyone needs to come to in their own good time, right? Don't try to tell people these things. I could say this in this video, and you can listen to it or not listen to it. You can shut me off anytime here, right? But I wouldn't go around saying this to people who are really in their suffering, unless they're asking you for help. It's basically, don't give unsolicited advice. If someone asks you for it, then that's another thing. Even if they ask you for it, they still might not want it, right? So that's where you have to pay attention to what's being asked, and really listen beyond the words. Listen to what the feeling is. But anyway, when it comes to all these things, I think the bottom line is we can't judge, right? There's something happening. There seems to be a greater plan at work in the universe, and our little brain, our ego self, can't fathom it and can't wrap our heads around what it is, right? There are greater forces at work. And ultimately, if Jesus is right and the Course is right, there is a grand design. There is a plan in place, right? The plan of salvation is in place, and everyone is. Our lives are all leading to that if we're open to it. Our whole life is all about returning home, if we're open to it. If we're not open to it, then we won't probably have that experience or have that awareness or have that understanding. But if we are open to that, then we can see that everything in our life is leading us home again. I could use the word salvation, or we could just say everything's leading us back home. And again, even and maybe even especially the bad shit, especially the worst things that ever happened to us are exactly the things that we needed the most. The wake-up calls that we needed. Now, if I can feel that for myself, which I do, why can't I not feel that for someone else, right? Who's going through a hard time? Even my child, right? Even if my child is terrorized or traumatized or something horrible happens, why can I not see that as well for my child? Now, let's do one other thing here, though, which is we have to differentiate between what I feel in my heart, in my mind, in my heart, and how I act. Like if someone is harming my child, for example, I can say, okay, this happened. It happened, and I believe that it's all for the best, all for the greater good. Now, but that doesn't mean I'm not going to try to stop that person or I'm not going to do something about it. Of course I am, right? So there's a difference between what you think and how you feel in your heart versus what you're actually going to do about it. And you can do something to stop that person in a loving way, right? You don't have to do it from a place of hatred and attack. But you can just do something just because it's the right thing to do in that moment, and you're helping your child, for example, if your child is, being hurt or something like that, you're helping your child, but you're also helping that other person because they're not in the right mind. You're helping them to get back to the right mind, right? They're probably going to feel very bad about what they're doing, whatever they're doing. And that's really what it comes down to, is that everyone is you might say that some people are pure evil and they have no remorse, they're just they're dead. But, you know, according to what the Course is saying, what Jesus is saying is that no one really is completely dead, right, inside. Everyone will go home. Everyone can be redeemed. Everyone, the darkness is just the absence of the light. And it may be very dark, and that's where the light can shine in. It can still shine in, right? It can still, the light can still be brought to the darkness. If you think that someone is beyond the pale of forgiveness, that's where the Course is not going to work for you. As long as you have that idea that some things and some people cannot be forgiven ever, then you're just blocking your own way, right? According to the Course. So, you know, I wanted to bring this in again, and really what Jesus is really saying, you know, if you really pay attention to what he's really getting at, is that these extreme cases are really your greatest teachers, and ultimately they are your saviors, and they are ultimately the things that you can be grateful for. And everything, you can be grateful for everything, and you can be grateful for even the hardest things, the people that are the worst, the people that are the bringing you the greatest grief in your life, the greatest trauma, the greatest trial and tribulation. They're the ones that you can be maybe the most grateful for, or at least as grateful as everything else. Right? And I laugh, you know, it's not funny in the moment most of the time, right? Most people cannot laugh in the face of adversity. Some people can, but they're probably people that have done this inner work, right? Most people are going to get deep into that, you know, ego place when adversity hits, and later they may come around to realizing that it was for the best. What the Course is aiming at doing, as far as I understand it, is to be able to be in any kind of adverse situation, and to be and to remain calm and in your true self, and in your right mind, and in your true self, in any moment of life, right? That you're able to remain in that place of equanimity, in that place of calmness and sureness, and essentially, you know, in that peaceful state, no matter what's happening. And the Course is leading us beyond tears and beyond fears, you know, beyond all tears, all fears. And is it possible to be completely fearless and tearless in this life? Well, that's for us to find out, right? It's for us to know, and for us to find out. And I think if we practice the Course, and if we take it seriously, if we really apply it and do the inner work, we will see, right? So anyway, I hope this is helpful. I might end up doing a part 3 to this. I would love to hear your feedback, your comments. I got some nice comments the other day to that first video. We'll love to hear your thoughts on all of this. And yeah, so all right, carry on.